Welcome to Prophet Talks. I'm Prophet. Today is Sunday, March 15th, 2026. And today we'll talk about Iran. I've been off the last 2 weeks, I've been traveling, and the Iran war uh, pulled me out of my schedule for a bit. But we are back to regular programming starting today when it comes to videos. Uh, and I think that after those 2 weeks, it's important to focus on the Iran war, as I believe it is the most consequential global event since probably the start of Ukraine war back in 2022. Uh, to start maybe with a bit of context, on February 28th, so 15 days ago, the US and Israel started a strike campaign on Iran. They started it by killing most of their senior leadership, including Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, probably in hopes of collapsing the regime pretty quickly. But instead of that, we got a decentralized IRGC targeting Gulf countries as well as closing the Strait of Hormuz, uh, generally trying to impose significant costs on the global economy in order to establish some kind of deterrence, so in order to force the US to back away and let them be. So since then, we saw plenty of strikes on Iran, from launchers and general infrastructure to almost carpet bombing of Tehran and other cities around the country. On the other side, we saw a rather scattered and unorganized response, but the one that is targeting a very vulnerable infrastructure, from Saudi refineries and Qatari refineries to some residential buildings in Bahrain and Arab Emirates. Mm. So as of this day, the strait is still closed. There is no actual plan to open it or to escort essentials through it. There are some talks about it. There are also talks about sending more equipment because the third carrier strike group with Bush is on the way. The amphibious assault unit is also on the way. So the Marines from East Asia, they will be on site in 2 weeks. So pretty much we are in a difficult situation because on the one hand there is Iran trying to re-establish deterrence, and on the other side we have US and Israel that pretty much cannot allow him to do it at the moment. So before US can really engage in any kind of de-escalation, they should probably at least establish an escort through the strait that is able to transport at least the essentials. So some amount of oil, gas, and fertilizer, along with stuff like food, for example, as Gulf countries are really reliant on shipping when it comes to that. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to context. But ultimately, what we need to do here is we need to look at the markets, because during those last 15 days, outside of the first 2-3 days when we really got a lot of footage from different countries when it comes to strikes, there's been almost zero verified information. What we are hearing is mostly talking points from either the US government, the Israeli government, or the Iranian regime. And this is basically the only data points we have. We need to be doubtful when we look at them because every country needs to control the flow of information. And anything that we are being shown, it can be true, it doesn't have to be true, it doesn't need to be true. It's something that the US or the Israeli administration wants us to see. So in that environment, in the media, in the social media, I think the only serious way to actually see what the conflict is about is prediction markets. And on Polymarket, we currently have almost 200 markets on different situations around Iran. So between all of them, I think we can get the most reliable information when it comes to where this war is heading. When it comes to me, I have several markets that I watch on a daily basis. I try to analyze them and understand what the price movements or the chances movement is telling us about how this war is going. So today I will go through these markets with you, I'll try to show you my understanding. I will give a bit of context to the price movements, uh, and I hope we'll reach some kind of a general conclusion on where we are and what's the expectations of the markets. So starting, I think, with the most consequential of all, which is the ceasefire, because ultimately, with the Strait closure, the global energy crisis looming somewhere in the background, what we are most interested in is actually the prospects of ending the conflict. And I need to tell you that they don't look very good, because since the start, we've basically seen a real decline in the chances of a ceasefire, and we can observe it the best market to observe it is the end of June market when it comes to ceasefire. The market has been up almost since the beginning of the war. It's March 3rd, so 3 days in. And what we can see here is that since that time, the chances dropped pretty significantly, because we started almost at 80%. This was the third day of the war. Many were still hoping that this is a few days of operations that will end pretty quickly, something like a 12-day war last year, or rather engagements that the Trump administration has been doing since 2025. But pretty soon, traders understood that it might not be that easy. The regime turned out to be quite resilient. They didn't collapse. In fact, they started to gather to choose the new leader. And this is the moment where the price of ES shares dropped to around 70 cents. And then it was pretty stable right around till March 10th. So it was 5 days ago. It was also the second week of the war. And I think that a lot of traders started to realize that ending this conflict might not be as easy as they suspected. Because, as I told you, the strait is still closed, and it will be pretty difficult for the US to announce a victory before they can secure meaningful traffic through the strait. The rationale here is pretty simple. If Iran is able to establish deterrence to the point that the US needs to exit before they can at least partially open the strait, then for Iran, this war is a strategic victory. And probably the result of such an action would be that the countries in the region would not only start to arm themselves and sign defense agreements like the Saudi defense agreement with Pakistan, but they will also try probably to engage more with Iran, because they would understand that the US is not actually able to open the strait if Iran chooses to close it, and they need to be on a somehow friendly basis with Iran in case they ever try to do it again. So I think a lot of traders started to understand that this war cannot end before there is meaningful traffic through the strait, and thus we see that the yes price collapsed to now 59 cents for the ceasefire till the end of June. And being very honest with you, if by that time you have no meaningful traffic through the strait, we are in for pretty difficult times. So let's move to the strait, because like after ceasefire, I think this is the most important market that I'm watching. So one is the traffic. When the traffic returns to normal, this is not as an important market, I believe, because this is pretty much a ceasefire market. I don't really believe the US with Israel, even with an international coalition, can actually open the strait completely. Like the usual traffic through the strait before the war started, we have here the 7-day moving average. It was around 100 vessels a day. And this is physically impossible to do, to escort 100 ships a day, because the US would need to guard those ships through their entire journey. So from the moment they approach the strait, through the strait, till the port, then in port they will need to also stay there to secure the loading and unloading, and then they will need to come back with them through the strait, and probably some more till it is considered to be a clear of danger of drones. So even with escorts and convoys, I don't think it is physically possible, considering all the munitions constraints and number of ships available, warships available, to actually return to 100% traffic. I do think there is a chance to go to a meaningful number. Meaningful meaning most of the oil flows, most of the gas flows, and some essentials like food. But otherwise, I think it would be pretty difficult. So here we can clearly see that the 37% chance of a return to normal by the end of April is pretty close to a ceasefire by the end of April. And this is no coincidence. Majority of the chance that is baked in here is around the ceasefire rather than a proper American escort operation. But then when it comes to the number of ships, I think there is a better market to analyze, and the market is how many ships will actually transit the Strait of Hormuz on any day in March. And the prospect here is pretty bleak because even 20 plus vessels is at 40 cents. So the market doesn't really suspect we will see even 20 boats passing the strait on any single day in the next 2 weeks. 20 is what I would consider essential traffic. So essential oil flows and gas flows, fertilizer flows, sulfur and basics for the Gulf countries to survive. And traders are not exactly bullish on this. This should be pretty worrying, generally speaking. And what can I say? What else can I say? You see that clearly there was a lot of more optimism even 5 days ago. But I also think this is tied with ceasefire, and also with the fact that at least currently the US is saying they cannot do escort operations. They're sending the Marines. They're sending the third carrier strike group. So the market generally bakes in that the US is not ready to escort, and it'll take some time to gather the necessary equipment, as well as to agree with the convoys and do all the aligning between the vessels, the military, the countries, so on, so on. So essentially, we can say that whatever we are seeing here, so the lack of traffic, we can probably expect it to continue for at least another 2 weeks, which is not exactly a great prospect. But well, it's pretty well tied to also this market, which shows us if the US would escort any commercial ship through the Hormuz Strait by the end of March. As you see, traders give 35% chance of that happening, and this includes any escorts or even a PR operation for optics would count here. There's 35% chance, even lower than the chance we will see 20 plus vessels cross the strait in a single day. There are still no markets on this when it comes to further dates, so further strikes. I think it will be really interesting to see what the market thinks about end of April when it comes to escorts, as well as the amount of ships on any day by end of April. All right. Moving next, the market I'm closely tracking is not the oil market per se, but it's rather a forecast on the price of oil by the end of March. This market is really interesting because it shows us where is the risk in the volatility. And what I mean by that is currently the price is around like overnight. Currently it's the weekend, but on Hyperliquid it's between $90 and $100 per barrel. But here we can clearly see that traders see a lot more risk to the upside. So even reaching $130 has a 30% chance. In the meantime, they see very little risk we are going down with the price, because even reaching $80 per barrel is at only 27 cents here. So my understanding here is that traders see that each day brings more risk, brings more disruption, uh, makes more countries really anxious to get new oil, and they see this will have an impact on the price. I agree with it. I think reaching 100 is a really likely in the next 2 weeks. 105 is really close. Probably the next psychological barrier that would need to be bridged is around 110 and 120, and we really see that 120 is not that likely. End of March is also an interesting strike date because probably we'll get a lot better information about end of April. Because if we see the conflict really prolonged, it will be April when we'll see the first escorts. It will be April when we'll see some stabilization when it comes to flows of oil and gas through the Strait. And this will probably be the moment where we could actually quantify the real impact to the global economy. But we're still not there yet. I think there's a lot of confusion around what will happen in the next 2 weeks, and these markets can really reprice a lot. As you see, even on the ceasefire market, for example, there tend to be a lot of spikes, and a single bullish message sent end of March ceasefire from 22 cents to 45 cents. So as you see, there's markets also start for a breakthrough. They want to understand where we are heading, and as they currently see it, there is not a lot of certainty, there is not a lot of clarity, and there is a lot of volatility. Moving next, the market I'm watching very closely is US forces to enter Iran. I think I need to make a distinction here because, for example, a rescue operation, as it was rumored, I think a week ago, is something a bit different than even a single marine unit going on the ground. A rescue operation is an in and out type of mission, while even a marine's deployment is probably something more permanent. But this market is now pumping, not strictly on some in and out rescue operation. It's pumping because the marines are actually on the way. And I do think that if we actually reach the point in which the US will have forces on the ground, we can easily say this conflict is not the one that will end soon. Because there's this sunk cost fallacy, right? So if we commit so many resources and we bear so many costs associated with the action, because it's free carrier strike groups, it's a lot of equipment, it's a lot of lost bases, radars, interceptors, it's a lot of reputational damage to the Gulf countries, it's the halt of liquefied gas production, it's refineries getting hit, it's tankers getting hit, it's residential buildings getting hit in countries like United Arab Emirates that praise themselves to be very safe. So already today, after 2 weeks, we can easily say that the costs of this operation are enormous. And it would be really hard to exit this operation and to off-ramp somehow if there is no clear justification for these costs. So I think this market represents really where that the traders' understanding of the sunk cost fallacy, because every day since the start of the war, the price here has been constantly increasing, even with the bullish messages by Trump to calm the markets. It only stabilized, it never really went down. And when we saw another escalation on the Karg Island, they just jumped back in. So I think this tells us we never really got a de-escalation info. I think it shows us we only got like narrative management, and then we continued with another escalation. So I'm generally aligned with the market here. I think we'll see US forces on the ground, and I think this will be only a first step. At least that's my impression from watching these markets for the last 2 weeks. That being said, though, there is not a lot of faith now that any militant group would actually rise up. There was initially a lot of expectations around the Kurds, There was this talk that the CIA or Israel is engaging them to start an insurgency in Iran. Uh, but I think this was never a real option. Mm, every country around Iran, including Iran, uh, hates the Kurds and doesn't want them to have a state, even a simple plot of land. Like it's not digestible to anyone. To Iraq, it's not digestible to Syria. It's not digestible to Iran, and most importantly to Turkey. So I think engaging the Kurds, arming them, would create a lot of tensions in the region. It would risk that all those other countries, and mainly Turkey, would also engage in the Iran war, and it would be it would it would have been like Syria, but 10 times worse, because Iran is a nation of 90 million people. So I never thought this is a real possibility, and I think it's good that the market also thinks that way now, and I hope we won't need the Kurds, because otherwise the whole region is going down for years. But anyway, I think it's good to have this information here. I think it's good that we have this market. Uh, well, it's good to track it. Moving next, we also have Kharg Island. I watched this market since yesterday, after the Trump announcement that they hit the island. I don't think this island is as important as many like to say. Generally speaking, yes, it does handle most of Iranian crude exports, but it doesn't mean that Iran doesn't have other ports that also have capacity to bring oil there, to load it on tankers, to export it to China and wherever else they're selling. They're not really using those facilities now, because Kharg Island is easier. Iranian shore is rather shallow. It's difficult to put, for example, VLCCs, so very large crude carriers, near the shore. Island is an easier spot, but anyway, if the US would decide to somehow attack this island or take it out, Iran would still have options to export. Some of those ports are even outside the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran would be obviously compelled to answer to it by damaging the Gulf infrastructure a lot harder than they did previously. And if there's anyone even remotely sensible in the war planning room, they would say that taking over or attacking oil infrastructure on the island is not a move that would somehow make the US position a lot better. Quite the contrary, it would risk an escalation that is really hard to reverse. Because when it comes to damaging oil facilities, or for example, setting oil fields on fire, these are the actions that take literally months to reverse. For example, when Iraq set fire to Kuwait oil fields, it took almost 9 months to put those fires out. So you can see the scale of damage, not only to the global economy or the energy markets, but also environmental damage that it would cause in the whole region. So I tend to agree with the pricing here. It probably should be even lower. I don't see the US really making this kind of tactical mistake or even strategic mistake. Moving next, I also watched the Iran regime fall market. I think also it's a good proxy to understand if there are not only forces, US forces on the ground, but also some kind of a civil war situation, because it is clear now that the regime is extremely resilient. Even killing of the most senior leadership didn't really make any cracks that could be utilized by either Israel or the US. So we see that the only real chance the regime is toppled or regime falls is when there are actual boots on the ground that force it, be it some outside militias or the US military or Israel military. But anyway, this is a good proxy then to understand if not only boots on the ground happen, but also a civil war situation happens. And as it is priced now, I don't think it gives a lot of confidence to a civil war happening. If those odds ever spike again to something like 60% or higher, I think it would be safe to say that at this moment we would have a real narrative about a prolonged conflict in the region that includes sending a significant number of US troops. Uh, and this would essentially be saying that it would be the American Ukraine, if you get the parallel between Russia and Ukraine. Like the US would be in the same situation in Iran that Russia is in Ukraine now. It would be like a prolonged war that the US cannot really exit and has a really hard time winning it. And then lastly, I also watch the Iran leader market. I think it's a good proxy on possible change in diplomacy, because as it currently stands, I don't think Mojtaba Khamenei, so the son of the ex-leader, is at all inclined to negotiate. The rumors I'm hearing is that he's actually a figurehead put in by the IRGC. So if that is true, then we have a very difficult situation, because IRGC has already been controlling most of the economy. Now they also have consolidated their control over the regime, so the bureaucracy, and they're not exactly pragmatist type. If you ask me, they're rather hardliners, ideological, proud, and they're hardly someone you can negotiate a clean exit with. So if the price of Mojtaba Khamenei goes down at some point, this would be a good indication that there are changes coming, but these changes can be the result of US forces on the ground, civil war, decapitation strike. So I would rather say that the more important signal here is stabilization of the price, or even increasing the price of Mojtaba Khamenei, because then it would mean that whatever change happened in Iran after the war started is a permanent one, and it will mean probably a prolonged conflict. What I don't understand here is Reza Pahlavi at 14 cents. I don't think this is even remotely possible that he'll be a leader of Iran in his lifetime. He is extremely disconnected from Iran. He's lived in the US ever since 1979, and I don't think he's a proper person to lead Iran, even if the regime falls. Anyway, this should probably be someone that has been in Iran for all those years and has some kind of understanding of how the country is working right now. Installing the Shah again would be difficult and necessary, and I think would lead to a lot of power struggles and tensions that are rather unnecessary in any scenario. So these are all the markets I'm watching every day. Obviously, there are a lot more because we've got 173 markets. Some of them more important, some of them less. I think other good markets to watch for are, for example, which countries will strike Iran. There are pretty low prices for any country, be it European or Middle Eastern, and I think that's a fair indication, because when it comes to offensive action, I see only US and Israel continuing. I see a lot of those countries doing defensive actions, but there is no need to engage them. Probably a good country to watch for here, I don't know if we have chances, is something like Iraq. Well, not even Iraq. I don't think there's any. Probably Turkey would be the best country to watch for if we ever see Turkey going higher than 5% to some meaningful price like 20 cents. This would mean that there is a real chance this war spills over and engulfs the whole region. All these other countries, I don't think they're especially interesting in that context. Maybe if we had here like Azerbaijan, that would also be an interesting market to see. Otherwise, all of those countries, be it Gulf or be it Europe, anyway they participate, it's only defensive. Other markets, war declaration, I don't think that's important at all. This is a special combat operation. just like Russia has its special military operation, I think that's the way the governments operate in this century. And doing a lengthy declaration of war that needs to go through Congress, I don't think that's happening at all. Invasion markets, they are pretty similar to US forces on the ground, but a bit more strict. US escort, we already discussed, is the same as Strait of Hormuz traffic. But as you see, there are plenty of more markets around striking certain facilities, tweeting. So if there is anything you would like to understand, there's probably a market for it. But those markets, those several markets I showed you, I think these are the most important markets when it comes to forecasting where we are headed. And like to sum it up a bit, these markets show me that traders are slowly but surely going into the direction that this conflict will be a prolonged one. And I think this is the message we'll start to see in the next 2 weeks. This will be an important change in the narrative, and I think the success or failure of it when it comes to political success and failure would like strictly depend on the traffic through the Strait of Hormuz and if the US would be able to actually escort a meaningful amount of vessels that would ensure at least some flow of energy and goods. So that's the summary. Let me know what's your take on the war. If you think we are ending soon, I would love to hear your argument why. Because as I explained, I don't really think this can be done unilaterally at this point. I do believe Iran would also need to get something out of it if the end is coming soon. So let me know if you got a different thesis. I would love to hear it. Otherwise, make sure to check out my X as well as Substack. I do a lot more posting and writing recently with the crisis. So if you're interested in more deep dives and more my opinions versus opinions of the markets, then you need to check out profitnotes.com. And if you want to discuss with me, hop on X and we can talk. Thank you for being here. If you like the video, please hit subscribe and like. It means a lot for the algorithm. It means a lot to me as well. And see you next week for another edition of Profit Talks.